Travel Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Vandenberg. On our show, I interview and connect with leaders across travel, hospitality, and tourism. We talk leadership in our industry, what has shaped them, the successes, failures, and everything in between. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Susan Berry, president of Hive Marketing and podcast host of Top Floor. The Travel Leader Podcast is brought to you by The Travel Leader, a leadership coaching and content company. I provide leadership coaching and workshops for individuals and teams to accelerate their leadership performance. Learn more at www.thetravelleadercoach.com. Hey, Susan, great to see you. Welcome to the Travel Leader Podcast. How's it going?
It's great. I'm so happy to be here, Rachel. Thanks for having me. This has been a long time coming. I think you were a guest in probably like the first 20 episodes of Top Floor. So I'm glad to be returning the favor.
Yes. And I remember being on your podcast and thinking, oh my gosh, she is so good at this and loves it. And I don't think I could ever do this. And at that point, I had no plan of doing a podcast. But after doing a couple different shows, including yours, which I had so much fun on, I was like, wait a second, maybe this is something cool.
Awesome. Well, the more the merrier for sure.
So thank you for being an inspiration for me.
Oh, my pleasure.
And definitely listen to the Top Floor podcast.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, to get us started, I'd love to know what has been the red thread throughout your travel and hospitality career.
Well, I started my career, I worked in restaurants for a good chunk of years and then was a director of sales and marketing for Starwood for 10 years in Denver, Washington, D.C., and here in Atlanta, Georgia. And most of what I did was open new build hotels, which is its own unique beast over and above running a hotel. And then left to start my company, Hive Marketing, in the spring of 2009. We have been in business for 15 years and 3 years ago started Top Floor, which is the absolute love of my life, the show about the future of hospitality. So I would say, thinking back over those career moves and changes and things like that, that my probably most consistent through line is restlessness and wanting to challenge myself, wanting to not... I don't want to say this in a disparaging way because I think it's perfectly normal for people who find what they want to do and want to keep doing it the same way over and over again. Fair. That's not me. And I have this sort of insatiable curiosity and desire to learn new things and push and challenge myself. And definitely that has been the absolute truth and case through the entirety of my very long career in hospitality.
Yeah, that is, I'm also hearing, you talk about opening new hotels, starting your own business, starting the podcast. Would you say it's also an entrepreneurial spirit?
I think so, but I think the entrepreneurialism comes from curiosity and probably slightly overdeveloped desire for autonomy, for wanting to control my destiny and be the sort of last word on what happens to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What is you think the driving force for that for you in terms of the autonomy specifically?
Gosh, I don't know. I do not like to be told what to do is probably the bottom line. And I like the idea that I am the master of my destiny, that I can work as hard or as little as I'd like and control the outcome. I like the idea that I can sort of dip my toe into things and explore new stuff all the time and not have to answer to anybody else in that process of exploration.
Yeah.
So that's probably it. And also I just don't like people telling me what to do.
Yeah. And that I could imagine that freedom of creativity that's linked to curiosity and going in the direction that you want to go in.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
So you definitely seem to have a clear self-awareness on where you are after these years in your career, throughout your career. How do you think someone else would describe you as a leader?
I think I am very self-aware, and so I could probably list this as pros and cons. So, on the pro side, I think I would be described as being very real, very much, bring my whole self to work. I care a lot about the people that I work with and about the outcomes of our work. So there's not sort of any healthy sense of remove. Like I care a lot.
Mm.
And then, I'm smart and I'm able to do a lot and sort of keep a lot of competing priorities and balls in the air at the same time. So those would be the pros. Probably also feel a little bit like cons, but specifically, I am an under explainer. I do not like things to be over explained to me, and I don't like to hear the same thing over and over again. That plays out as me being an under explainer. I'm very aware of that. And so the people that work with me know that there is no such thing as a question they can't ask because I am very aware that I sometimes under explain like expectations or the process or, that kind of thing. I think because I'm pretty real, I seem like I would be a lot more laid back than I am. Listener, I am not laid back. I am not laid back at all. And I'm pretty impatient. I like fast responses, fast results, fast progress, movement, etc. versus, it'll happen when it happens. That is definitely off brand for me.
Right. You want results.
Yes, results and just like progress. I want, something's not working now. I don't want to know at the end. I want to know as you discover that something's not working, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that bridges a little bit to what I wanted to talk about next. About that idea of like who are you at your core and your value system, things like that. Some of the stuff you already talked about relates to that, but what else could you say about that?
There's not a big separation from work me and life me because I love working and I love the work that I'm doing. But I think that if I didn't have to work, the way that you would perceive me or describe me as being creative, pretty silly, wanting to be an entertainer at all times and make people laugh, whether I succeed or not, no matter what, to my detriment, I am for the underdog. I have a very, very, very strong sense of what is just and what is fair. And that means that I feel sorry for people who don't deserve it.
Well, I'm very curious about that. What was there something in your past or in a story that you could tell about when you were the underdog?
Oh gosh. I don't want to be disappointing, but nothing's coming to me right off the top of my head. I think that instead I would probably trace those roots to growing up in a family very much valued what is right, what is just, and what is fair. And
Yeah.
so that was probably injected into my veins in the womb and
Yeah.
has never left me. My father marched with the NAACP in New Orleans in the 1960s.
Wow.
So there's a very long history in my family on all sides of this fascination with, or that's a wrong word, the over identification with justice, with what is right and what is fair.
Right. So it wasn't necessarily you being the underdog, but more that value system that was shaped from a very young age.
Yeah, absolutely true.
No, that makes sense. What standards do you hold yourself accountable to, and how do you model those for others?
I mean, this sounds sort of self-aggrandizing, so I'm kind of embarrassed to say it, but I really, really don't believe in doing the bare minimum or like following a scope of work to the letter of the law.
Mm-hmm.
I always want to do more. I always want to give more than what someone expects. I always want there to be excellent results. Like for my clients, for example, if something's not written out in words in our scope of work, but it makes sense in the context of the work that we're doing, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to, negotiate for $5 more to like look something up on Google for them or whatever. And people who are okay with that, with scraping by or like just doing the bare minimum or half-assing things, it drives me insane. So I probably model it by being really irritated when people do the opposite, because it just is not part of my core makeup to like wait to be asked to do something if it's obvious that it needs to be done. Again, I feel like it sounds a little self-aggrandizing, and I don't mean it to. That's just very, much a part of who I am.
No, I mean, I don't hear it that way. I mean, I hear just like, a drive for excellence and contributing something of quality. So that's what I'm hearing. And
okay, good. That's what I exactly intended.
Right. So I mean, another way to look at it, I mean, instead of modeling, is, do you think you have a particular way of inspiring people to live to that standard themselves?
I think the most effective way to do that is leading by example. When it counts and when it matters, it is very clear that I will go the extra mile regardless of having to stay up late or, do something weird. And I think that comes across. I think that I know when I have seen that in people who are leading me, it made me want to be better. And I think the same is probably true with the people I work with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, definitely related to this topic is, we've been talking about going after those high quality results and your drive to go above and beyond. What do you think inspires you and motivates you to create that kind of impact?
This is a really good one. If you edit out every other thing that I say, I hope that you will keep this, because
I don't edit, so don't worry.
So good. And just the older I get, the more it is like mind-boggling to me. So when I was a little girl, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s and a little bit in the 90s. And I have a sister. It's just the two of us. My parents decided very intentionally and specifically that all of the professionals that they worked with, so like our doctors, lawyers, their CPA, anyone that they encountered in a professional context, had to be women, because they wanted my sister and me to see all of the possibilities that were available to us. My parents were teachers, and that is a very women coded job for the most part, right? And so I think it was important to them that we could see other options as well. Not that they didn't want us to be teachers, but that we knew that we didn't just have teacher as an option. We could do all of the things. And as a result of that, for the most part, until probably like middle school, I had no idea that sexism was still a thing. And I remember finding it out. There are a couple different things that come to mind, the specifics of which aren't that interesting, but like being in a class and hearing a teacher say something that was a little bit sexist, and just finding that out and feeling like it was such a slap in the face. Like, wait a minute, what? I didn't know this was real. I thought this was fixed and solved. And, idea when we say representation matters, this is why. Because I grew up with full representation of women in every possible professional career. And so when I see sexism or misogyny or injustice in any way, never stops taking me by surprise, which I think is a good thing, because I think the fact that I am unwilling to accept it as sort of the status quo means that I'm able to take action and even talk about things that, you might not if you were like, well, that's just how it is. You know what I mean?
Well, because I think a lot of times if it becomes such like the accepted norm, we can become numb to it, right? And So I can understand that a lot. Wow, what a formative experience. And I tell you, it really connects the dots for me for so many things, amazing things I already know about you. But to see that kind of like early experience and how that has influenced where you are today. And I can imagine, I mean, that contributes to the initiatives that you are part of. For instance, female founders, which is such a great initiative that you're part of the steering committee. Is there anything that you would like to say about that and how that inspires and motivates you?
Oh my gosh, Female Founders in Hospitality is such a great organization, founded by Nina Cleveland, who is the founder and CEO of Lanyard. And she started it because when she was starting her company, she couldn't find something similar, sort of a network of women who were doing the same things, going through the same things, maybe a few ahead of her in line, a few behind her in line. And so she started this organization to create kind of like a mastermind concept, or I don't want to say support group because that makes it sound a little wimpier than it really is.
Right. Yeah.
But this structure where we have cohorts of women who are in the process of founding businesses in travel and hospitality across disciplines. So all different types of businesses, technology, event planning, all of the things, and give us the chance to share our lessons and things like, what computer did you buy, or how are you going about hiring your first employee, stuff like that. So yeah, it's an incredibly powerful organization. Probably one of the most powerful things is one that I don't have the opportunity to partake in because I'm a service business, but that is the sharing of fundraising information for people who are like trying to go out to the VC community or trying to find angels or trying to find limited partners to invest in their companies. I mean, that information has been for so long hidden, and women still only get something like 2% of VC
Right.
funding. So the fact that we're able to share that information among this, like now more than 100 women, is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you brought that point up because I was going to bring that up just about how little goes to female founders.
Mm-hmm.
I was really completely shocked by that when I was reading When Women Lead. I have it behind me somewhere here, but it has a lot of that data and info about just how bad the inequality is when it comes to women starting businesses. So yeah, great cause, great organization. So thank you for telling us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely.
So much of what you've said so far is so inspiring and empowering. I feel like I want to bottle it up. But how do you take that and empower others?
It's two things. We talked about this a little bit already, but I definitely have high expectations and try to lead by example with those. So I believe in the people that I work with, and I know that they can meet those expectations easily. But the other side of that is I'm a good communicator and a good writer, and I believe that one of my roles in Female Founders and in many of the things that I do is to express things in a way that helps other people untangle their own thoughts. So to help people get to the crux of an issue versus maybe only speaking from a knee-jerk reaction or emotion or something like that. I think that I'm good at helping make a point very clear.
Yeah. Believing in people, number one. Two, the second thing you said about communication. I mean, that's what triggers people to action, right? Is when you can, like, really get to the crux of the issue and help them see things in new ways. And that can only happen through good communication. So, yeah, it's a great way to boil it down. What are you proud of?
Oh gosh, I'm proud of a lot of things. I'm proud that I've owned my business for 15 years. I'm proud that Top Floor will be celebrating our third anniversary soon. But none of that stuff would have happened if I hadn't had this courage that P.S. I have no idea where it came from, probably from necessity, to move across country by myself when I was in my 20s. Cross country hotel tour of duty from Florida to Denver to Washington, D.C. to Atlanta. And I think that when you push yourself and challenge yourself in that way, you become aware of what you're capable of. And I don't think I would have ever been able to do Hive Marketing or Top Floor if I hadn't first had the opportunity to move all over the place with Starwood and have to figure that stuff out and just like make it happen. I mean, think about this. I moved to Denver from Tallahassee, Florida, before cell phones, before, not just before GPS, but before MapQuest. Like we had
Whoa.
foldy maps, to try to get there. And so there's not a whole lot now that feels insurmountable.
Yeah. No, there's so much to be said from, pushing your comfort zone and realizing, wait, what did I just do? I just accomplished this. Maybe I can push myself a little bit further and do something else new and different.
It's confidence building because you start to trust your abilities. You trust yourself to make it happen regardless. And, this is why, even though this may seem like a tangent, but I swear it's related. On my show, we talk about higher education a lot and whether it makes sense for people who want to have a career in hotels to get a hospitality degree. I'm very torn on it because I'm a very big believer in education, but the hotel business is such an apprenticeship industry that, it's kind of hard.
Experiential.
But the idea that you leave, the bosom of your family after you graduate from high school, go somewhere and do something, even if it's, get a degree in philosophy or whatever the case may be, I think is that first piece of confidence building that ultimately teaches you how to get along with people you've never met before, how to navigate in strange spaces. And so when we only equate higher education to job training, you miss all of those softer benefits, that confidence building, that learning to navigate the world skills, all that stuff.
Yeah, the school of life, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, just going back to for a second for, your description of where the confidence building started for you with moving across the country. That's you did that literally, but it was also figuratively a metaphor for going to the new frontiers, right? Pushing new boundaries geographically, but also internally and how you grow and develop. So I love that story so much. What leadership skill do you most rely on to lead people and teams?
Right off the bat, I would say humor and empathy. But also, I'm just really, really, really interested in people. I'm just curious and I want to know everything about someone, what they like, what they think, what happened to them. I also have a really good memory, so I usually can remember most of it. And that helps a lot when you're working with people, professional or in a volunteer setting, to be able to ask them questions or bring back up points that they made in the past. Fortunately for me, it's super easy because I'm so nosy and curious about everything about everyone all the time. So that helps.
Well, no wonder you're such a great podcast host too, because that's part of the skill, right? Is getting deeper, asking those questions, digging through what people have to say makes a ton of sense. And I think, humor so underestimated in terms of that importance and bringing that into not just your personal life, but into the professional world. We're too serious about things in general, I think.
I remember this thing. I think Brian Proctor. He hosts Tuesdays Thanks, which is another podcast. And he was part of a group of bosses that I had early in my career. And he used to say this thing right before we would get the hotel open. Everyone's a nervous wreck and, having fits and just getting mad at each other and all tensions are high. And he would be like, hey guys, we are not doing rocket surgery here. This is a hotel. Right. It is fun. You are supposed to have a good time. Everybody sit down and calm it down a little bit. It's such good advice. And listen, like I told you, I am not as laid back as I seem to be. I would be a neurotic mess. Like everything must be perfect all the
Yeah.
time. And then he's like, look, you need to settle down, you psycho. Calm it down.
Yeah, no, that's also a skill to just be able to step back and look at things and say like, wait a second, let's have some perspective.
I think that that is why I'm on earth, to learn that skill, because I do
Yeah,
not have it.
right. Yeah. So we're just about to come to the end already. Before we do that, I wanted to ask you, what vision would you pursue if you had everything you needed to succeed right now?
This is the hardest question I could ever answer in the history of time. Okay, here's why. I have a new idea like every day, every hour, every day. And I'm not sure that I want to have anything that I need to execute against all that stuff, because that would be living in a tornado of chaos, which
Right.
I do not want, right? So, in some ways, don't want to pursue at least not every vision of the future that I have. Also, love my work. I love it. I love working. I have so much fun all the time. Love my show. And I love, like I said earlier, just having the autonomy to sort of explore things that interest me or tickle my fancy or whatever. It's hard to say because I don't know that I would want anything to be any different. I will tell you, this is a small thing, but if I had the resources, I don't know, like a presenting sponsor or something like that, I would do more episodes of Top Floor every week. But that's
Yeah.
it. I don't think I would change much more than that.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said too that, a little bit of scarcity forces us to make good decisions, right? Like or to narrow down like what's really important.
Mhm.
So that makes me think, how do you decide with all those ideas? How do you decide between a good one and a not so good one?
Oh my gosh. I don't think they're bad, Rachel. I just think I'm crazy and I need to calm down.
Never.
I'm telling you, I'm trying. This is my life lesson that I'm here to learn, how to just do more with less, or less is more. In fact,
Right.
less is more is you know how people will pick a word of the year?
Hmm.
Less is more is my theme of the year. How can
Yeah.
I do less and have more? Less is more.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I still have a handful of things that are rolling around in the back of my mind that I insist will be accomplished before I'm 6 feet under.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the things that I can't stop thinking about that
Yeah.
let me know that it's a good idea.
Yeah. And the ones where you think when all is said and done, like this is what I definitely want to have accomplished.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have come to the end, unfortunately. Is there anything else that you would like to tell our audience today?
I don't know. Should I do like shameless self
Yes,
promotion?
do it. Do it.
I'm going to give you a tip and then I'm going to tell you to listen to my show.
Yes.
My tip is, if you are a LinkedIn user, if you want to help yourself and help your connections and help the companies that you interact with, leave a comment rather than reposting or clicking the like button or anything else. We all don't always have time to do that, but leaving a comment performs better on the algorithm. It indicates that a good conversation is taking place. So leave a comment. That may seem like a random thing to share, but I would like everyone in the world to know that. And then what I would like everyone who's listening to do is we always on show. So we come out every single week on Tuesday with something new. We don't take breaks or do seasons. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or topfloorpodcast.com.
Awesome. That's great. Well, yeah, definitely listen in. When I was still working as the GM of our family hotel in right after COVID, when we had to, pitch in a lot, I was in housekeeping a lot. Your podcast was often on my playlist to get me through those days.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, and I think the LinkedIn comment is perfect, because LinkedIn has been so impactful in my relationships in the industry.
Me too.
And it's the reason I met you and have met so many other people, and people that you think are so far away, but then really just makes the world smaller and more connected. So that's a great tip you shared.
100%.
Well, thanks again. And yeah, we'll be seeing you on Top Floor and in other places. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
You're welcome.